Beyoncé's hidden mentor, the woman behind the queen. Uncover the identity of the woman who helped shape Beyoncé's rise to power, and why she's never mentioned. Hey, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Your support really means the world. Before the world called her Queen Bey, Beyoncé Giselle Knowles was just a Houston girl with a dream, a voice, and a mother who stitched her stage costumes by hand. Her rise felt destined, a perfect blend of talent, beauty, discipline, and ambition. But every empire has a hidden architect. And for Beyoncé, that architect never stood in front of a camera. Her name was Yvette Caldwell. She had a voice like velvet dipped in smoke, and when she entered a room, it was as if the air rearranged itself around her. She always wore silver rings on every finger, each one different, each one holding a story she rarely told. Her laugh was low and sudden, like thunder rumbling through silk. Students at the community center used to say, "You never forget the first time she looks at you like she already knows who you're going to become." She wasn't a music executive. She wasn't a vocal coach. She wasn't even on the payroll, not officially. But between 1996 and 2003, she played one of the most pivotal roles in Beyoncé's creative, spiritual, and emotional evolution. To those who knew her, Yvette wasn't just a mentor. She was a force, part griot, part mystic, part coach. Her influence came not from fame or followers, but from a deeply rooted philosophy that art without soul is just noise. Yvette didn't teach Beyoncé how to be famous. She taught her how to carry her power without losing her center. She called it becoming sovereign. Yvette Caldwell was a former stage actress who had burned out early. A graduate of Howard University's Fine Arts program, she once toured with small black theater companies across the South, known for her voice and fire, but never quite breaking through. She had played Lady Macbeth in Baton Rouge, Antigone in Birmingham, and even did a one-woman show in Atlanta that had drawn a small cult following. But after a back injury, mounting medical debt, and the loss of her mother, she moved home to Houston and started teaching drama at the Eldridge Community Center. That's where she met Beyoncé. Destiny's Child was still called Girls' Time back then. The girls rehearsed relentlessly under Matthew Knowles's strict eye. But it was Yvette who first pulled Beyoncé aside after a performance and said, "You've got the voice, but you're hiding something." At first, Beyoncé was defensive. She was 13, controlled, trained. But Yvette's words stuck. Over the next few weeks, Yvette would stay after class, working with Beyoncé not on notes or runs, but on stillness, on presence. "When you sing," she told her, "you're a vessel, not a product." Yvette pushed Beyoncé into discomfort. She asked her to sing barefoot, to sing with her eyes closed, to read her lyrics out loud like monologues. She dissected Beyoncé's favorite artists, Aretha, Lauren, Whitney, not just for technique, but for truth. What were they saying, really? What pain lived underneath that sound? It was Yvette who gave her books, Toni Morrison, Maya Angelou, James Baldwin, and said, "These are your ancestors in the work. Learn them, feel them." And it was Yvette who asked her, "Who are you when no one's clapping?" One night, during a rainstorm, Yvette had Beyoncé lie on the floor and sing to the sound of thunder. "Feel how the storm moves through you," she said. "That's your breath when it's honest." While Matthew Knowles drove the branding, the showcases, the contracts, Yvette operated underground. At night, Beyoncé would sneak away to Yvette's apartment, a cluttered one-bedroom over a soul food restaurant in 3rd Ward. There, surrounded by incense, velvet curtains, and stacks of poetry books, they'd rehearse. Not just music, energy. The apartment smelled like sandalwood and old vinyl. A rusted upright piano stood in the corner with chipped ivory keys. The windows were always cracked open, no matter the season. The air buzzed with incense smoke and jazz. Yvette taught her how to walk into a room without saying a word and command attention, how to breathe before answering a question, how to turn silence into suspense, how to let her eyes rest in a crowd without flinching. She called it frequency work. Sometimes they wouldn't sing at all. They'd meditate, or dance blindfolded to Nina Simone, or read Audre Lorde out loud until Beyoncé's voice cracked. Yvette would say, "Let the vibration break you." Then rebuild from the vibration. In those dimly lit nights, Beyoncé began to transform, not just as an artist, as a woman, as a presence. She began to develop what Yvette called the untouchable center, the ability to perform from pain without bleeding. They recorded hours of tapes together, spoken affirmations, melody fragments, vocal improv. Yvette would play them back and say, "Listen to where you disappear. That's where you start." By 1999, Destiny's Child was going platinum. One night during the MTV Spring Break event in Cancun, Beyoncé stood backstage, seconds before walking out into the lights and screaming fans. Amid the chaos, dancers stretching, stylists checking hair, earpieces being adjusted, she spotted a figure in the shadows near the curtain. Just for a second. Yvette. Not part of the crew, not on the list. Just watching. Their eyes met. Yvette didn't wave. She simply nodded once, slowly. It was a gesture they had rehearsed long ago. Acknowledge, without anchoring. That night, mid-performance, during a rare solo vocal bridge, Beyoncé closed her eyes for 2 full bars longer than the arrangement called for. The crowd went wild, thinking it was part of the emotion. It wasn't. It was her remembering. Yvette never went to the parties. She stayed in the shadows. "I'm not here to be seen," she once told Beyoncé. "I'm here to make sure you are." By 2001, Destiny's Child was global. 3 #1 singles, sold-out tours, magazine covers, and endorsement deals. But fame, like pressure, exposes every crack. Matthew Knowles had always been a commanding presence, a businessman with a vision. To him, success was a system. Rehearsals, image, rollout plans, all designed for domination. And Yvette? She was the antithesis of that model. To Matthew, her influence was unpredictable, unmarketable, and most of all, unmonitored. The tension came to a head one humid afternoon in the spring of 2001. Matthew showed up unannounced at Yvette's apartment. He didn't knock. He banged. Beyoncé answered the door, surprised and tight-lipped. Yvette, calm but firm, invited Matthew in. The meeting lasted 84 minutes. No one else was present, but neighbors heard raised voices. Matthew accused Yvette of mystifying the process, of getting in Beyoncé's head. Yvette didn't flinch. "Your daughter doesn't need another coach. She needs a mirror." Beyoncé sat silently, torn, between the structure that had built her and the soul that had shaped her. In the weeks that followed, the distance grew. Beyoncé kept rehearsing, performing, recording, but something in her posture had shifted. She became quieter off stage, more precise on it. One night before a show in Atlanta, a backup dancer found her alone in the green room, scribbling furiously in a worn journal. When the dancer glanced at the page later, she saw a single line written over and over. "The mirror is gone, but I still see her in me." That week, Beyoncé changed the outro of Emotion during rehearsal, holding the final note longer, then letting it trail off in silence. The crew said it gave them chills. Nobody asked why. When she finally did show up at Yvette's door, she brought a bodyguard. The visit lasted only minutes. Beyoncé gave her a soft hug and handed her a letter. It was the last time they saw each other. As Beyoncé stepped back from the doorway, her eyes lingered for a second longer than she meant to. There was something in Yvette's face, not disappointment, but a soft acceptance, a silent goodbye already spoken. Beyoncé felt the urge to say something, anything, to ask if she'd ever forgive her, or if she should even be forgiven. But instead, she just nodded, turned, and walked toward the waiting car. Halfway down the path, she looked back. Yvette was still standing there, framed by the doorway, one hand resting lightly on the frame. She didn't wave. She just breathed in deeply, like she was taking in the last note of a song that meant everything. Beyoncé carried that image with her for years. In a final note, Yvette kept in a lacquered box by her bed. Handwritten, tear-stained, Beyoncé wrote, "I have to keep peace in my house. I want to stay close to you, but right now, I can't." Yvette never replied. She understood. Though they never reconnected, Yvette's fingerprints were everywhere in Beyoncé's next chapter. From Dangerously in Love to I Am. Sasha Fierce. The tension between polish and passion, between the machine and the soul, played out in every beat. But it wasn't until Lemonade that her ghost influence screamed. In the chapter titled Denial, as Beyoncé stands waist-deep in churning water, her white gown billows around her like smoke, the fabric clinging and releasing as if breathing with her. The water isn't calm. It moves with purpose, as if carrying history in its current. Her voice doesn't just speak the words, it carves them into the air. The scene pulses with deliberate ritual, echoing the rhythm of Yvette's basement meditations, controlled breath, body submerged, spirit rising. Each word lands like a pebble in a pool, creating ripples that spread long after the scene ends. Her gaze into the camera is steady, not confrontational but ancient, like she's channeling something older than herself. Something Yvette helped her remember. As Beyoncé intoned poetry against the backdrop of cascading water, viewers saw not just grief, but ritual, a theatrical cleansing that echoed Yvette's basement exercises in emotional release. And in Forgiveness, when Beyoncé appeared robed in yellow, moving with regal slowness through corridors of black women dressed in white, it mirrored Yvette's lessons on ancestral presence and silence as resistance. "Don't hurt yourself" wasn't just a lyric. It was a mantra Beyoncé once repeated with Yvette during breathwork, over and over, like a protection spell before stepping into the spotlight. During the homecoming performance at Coachella, when Beyoncé stood silently before the beat dropped, eyes closed, arms wide, it echoed an exercise Yvette had taught her years ago: find your center before you move. Insiders say Beyoncé referred vaguely to a woman who taught me how to be quiet, loud. That was her. A small triangle stitched into the lining of Beyoncé's stage costumes, invisible to the audience but always felt. That was her too. It was something Yvette once embroidered by hand on a scarf she gave Beyoncé as a teenager. A symbol for alignment, breath, and return. Yvette passed away in 2015. Liver cancer. Her decline was slow but dignified. She refused hospice and insisted on staying in her apartment above the restaurant, where the smells of frying okra and cornbread still rose through the floorboards. A local nurse named Denise, who once took one of Yvette's acting classes, visited twice a week to change her dressings and bring groceries. In her final days, Yvette was mostly quiet, but on one rainy afternoon, she asked Denise to bring her journal to the bedside. She wrote only a few lines, her hand shaking, but her eyes steady. Later, after she passed, the nurse found the entry: "She doesn't need my voice in her ear anymore. She learned to find it in herself." That is enough. And then, beneath that, 3 words written in block letters: fire, still, breathing. In her final months, she remained in her small Houston apartment, refusing to leave the neighborhood she'd poured her spirit into. Friends said she kept a stack of old performance flyers and a weathered journal where she sometimes scribbled thoughts while watching Beyoncé's televised appearances. She never spoke ill of their parting, only that she knew Beyoncé had to walk her own path. One former student, now a poet, sat with her near the end and asked if she'd ever reconnect. Yvette smiled faintly. "She already carries me," she whispered. "She doesn't need to come back to remember." Her funeral was held in a small chapel, with cracked stained glass windows and folding chairs, the kind where the wood creaks beneath each footstep. Faint gospel music hummed through a portable speaker in the back. Mahalia Jackson, low and reverent. The air smelled faintly of old books and lilies. Outside, rain tapped lightly on the window panes, creating a rhythm that felt almost like breath. Mourners spoke in hushed tones, their voices muffled by the thick velvet curtains. The entire room carried a sacred stillness, not the kind born of grief alone, but of reverence, as if everyone present understood they were bearing witness to the passing of a spirit larger than life. With cracked, stained glass windows and folding chairs, no celebrities attended. But a woman with honey-colored braids in the back row stayed after everyone else left. She placed a folded note inside the casket before it was closed. her fingers trembling slightly as they lingered on the edge. Her eyes were glassy, but no tears fell. She closed them for a moment, as if listening inward. Then she leaned in, just barely, and whispered something no one else could hear. A blessing, a memory, or maybe just goodbye. Whatever it was, it stayed between her and Yvette. Only then did she straighten, her shoulders square, but heart visibly heavy, and step back into the stillness of the chapel. The handwriting was unmistakably Beyoncé's. On the outside of the paper, a single word: center. What was inside? No one knew. But those who'd seen Beyoncé's earliest journal entries with Yvette said that word had always been their anchor, their code for returning to truth. That same month, Beyoncé posted a single image to Instagram. A burning candle, no caption. Fans speculated. Most missed the connection. The next year, during the Formation World Tour's Houston stop, at the very end of the show, Beyoncé stood still, mic at her side, and whispered into the mic just before the lights dropped. "Thank you, Miss Yvette." It was barely audible, not in the official audio, but one fan's live recording caught it. The post was titled, "Who is Miss Yvette?" In the years since, Parkwood has never confirmed the identity. No mention in official liner notes, no bio, no interviews. And yet, you can feel her, like the scent of sandalwood long after the incense is burned out, like the low hum of a tuning fork that only the soul can hear. Her spirit moves through the pauses between beats, in the silence before the spotlight flares, as if the stage itself remembers. In the gaze Beyoncé holds on stage before the lights rise, in the way she breathes before each powerful spoken word verse, in the stillness before the storm. On tour, during every final dress rehearsal, Beyoncé is said to perform one gesture Yvette once taught her. A slow breath, eyes closed, both palms turned upward for 5 seconds of stillness before she opens her eyes. The rehearsal space falls utterly silent. Crew members pause mid-motion, dancers instinctively lower their voices, and the stage lights dim just enough to make the moment feel suspended in air. The atmosphere becomes thick with intention, not performance, but presence. Even new dancers, unaware the gesture's origin, sense something sacred in it. It's a moment when rehearsal becomes ritual, and the room, no matter how temporary, feels like a temple. A slow breath, eyes closed, both palms turned upward for 5 seconds of stillness before she opens her eyes. It's not part of the choreography. It's never filmed, but it's there. A silent invocation. Those who knew Yvette recognize it instantly, and they smile. Yvette Caldwell's name may never trend, but every time Beyoncé becomes not just an artist, but a vessel. She is there, the woman behind the queen. And in the quiet, if you listen closely, you can almost hear her whisper. A final echo from the wings. Be still. Be fire. Be whole.